I get a roll call, please?
Noonan.
Here.
Franz.
Here.
Andalcio.
David?
Andalcio.
David, can you hear us?
Hear me?
Yes.
Bilodeau.
Here.
Connolly.
Here.
Eckhoff.
Here.
Moranowitz.
Here.
Linehan.
Here.
Shar.
Here.
Tutmeyer.
Here.
Teams.
Here.
Tillman.
Here. We have a quorum. All right, a physical quorum. Since we don't have a physical quorum present, we're meeting subject to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act. And also, if I could just from some housekeeping rules too, all votes will be conducted by a roll call vote. Next item.
Public comment first.
Yes. Public comment.
One public comment from Keith Creston, Krestan, of Lyle Woodridge Fire District. And the comment is a note record of attendance at the meeting.
Chairman's remarks. The only thing I ask you to, in addition to the housekeeping rules, if anybody makes a motion or a second, if you could follow that with identifying your last name, would be appreciated. I do not have any further remarks. Do we have any remarks from our members? Okay, hearing none. All right, consent agenda under 6A, the FY19 annual audit review. With us today, we have Joe Lightcap from Baker Tilly, and he will be available with us here on Zoom.
Morning.
Joe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for using Baker Tilly as your auditors. As mentioned, my name is Joe Lightcap, and I'm the partner on your engagement. I perform the detailed partner review. I have two reports that I'll go over today: the audited financial statements and the reporting and insights from the 2019 audit. I'll be presenting at a very high level, so if you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any time, or I'll take some general pauses and we can talk then, however you would like to do that. The first, I'll start with the financial statements. On Roman numeral page 1, we issued, once again, a clean or unmodified opinion on the board's financial statements. This is the highest level of assurance you can gain from your outside auditors, and states that the financial information presented is reasonable in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. There were no new accounting standards adopted during the year, so the financial report itself kind of will look similar to what it did in the prior year. I always like to point out, starting on page Roman numeral 3, is the management's discussion and analysis. This is a great section of the report that gives you a high-level overview for what changed from the prior year. It's written by management. It's just their understanding of what happened. It gives you a good spot to go to really understand the financial picture for the year. A couple of things I'll highlight from that letter. A board's net position, which is when we consider all of capital assets, as well as your cash and other short-term receivables and payables. Net position increased $4.9 million during the year, primarily due to intergovernmental reimbursements and increased charges for services. On the fund level, so when you look at your different funds and then the short-term perspective, total revenues were $16.7 million and total expenditures were $13.5 million for a fund balance surplus of about $3.1 million. During the year, there were about $4 million in transfers to close out the wireless and wireline funds and present the one equalization fund, as well as reimbursing prior year costs. So going forward, the number of funds presented will be reduced just to the 3. And then, so the rest of the report, there's a lot of your financial information, there's budget to actual information, and then there's the notes to the financial statements, which gives you a lot of detail on the different accounting policies and ins and outs of the numbers for the year. I guess with that, that very high level overview of the financial statements, if you have any questions on those, I can answer them now or move on to the next report. Okay. The next report is the reporting and insights from the 2019 audit. This document, along with some information that we need to communicate is according to auditing standards. It also has my email and phone number if there are any questions after the meeting. This information was previously presented in what we had called the communications of those charged with governance and management. This is a rebranded version of that letter. It's really meant to kind of be easier to follow and that, but the information in there is really what you've seen in the past. It satisfies a few different auditing standards, and a good part of it for you is that it's very much a boilerplate letter, meaning that there wasn't anything too significant to report to the board. The letter addresses our responsibilities, management's responsibilities, that there were no significant changes to the audit plan or areas of focus, no new accounting policies or standards, our thoughts on any significant risks of material misstatement, which were none outside of the standard areas, our key areas of emphasis. We also have a section on internal control related matters. We look at internal controls to plan the nature, timing, and extent of our audit procedures, not to provide an opinion to you on internal controls. But if there was anything of note that we felt you should know, it would be in that section. We're happy to report that there's nothing in there. And then also, there were no significant unusual transactions, no difficulties performing the audit, no disagreements with management. And finally, there's a section on two-way communications regarding your audit. While we work with management to complete the audit, we ultimately work for the board. So this part of the letter has some information that we feel is important for the board to know regarding the audit and provides some points for the board to consider. And if you should ever have any questions or concerns related to these or anything else related to the audit, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time during the year. With that, those are my prepared remarks, unless there are any questions.
No questions, just a quick comment if I could. Mark Franz here. Just wanted to suggest to the board that given our starting discussions here with the budget, the audit's now complete. I would like to have this group discuss our capital reserve policy and a need for an operating reserve policy, in my opinion. And maybe that could be something we discuss next month.
This is Jim Conley on Member Franz's comment. Is there any place in the audit where any of those reserves show up? I went through and I may have missed it, but I didn't see it.
They don't necessarily show up as in the audit. That would be something more of a budget standpoint. The money is considered, the funds that you have are considered restricted based on the nature of the revenue. So that's really at least for the audit perspective, the level of detail that it gets to.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any questions for Joe? Gwen, do you have any comments?
No, we're fine. Run over it.
Thank you. Okay, with that, regards to a consent agenda item A1, I'm looking to entertain a motion to receive and place on file 19-20-42 FY19 annual audit report.
So move, Tegmeyer.
Graham.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor state aye.
No, roll call.
Aye.
Roll call.
There we go.
There
It's
you
gonna be
go.
busy today.
Tetmeyer.
Aye.
Teams.
Aye.
Coleman.
Aye.
Newman.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Indalcio.
David's muted.
Ignacio,
You're muted, David.
I hear him every time he's answered.
Me too.
We're not hearing him on our end.
Yeah, we hear him.
That's interesting.
He's saying yes.
Philadelphia,
Thumbs up.
Connolly,
Yes.
Blackoff. Ranowitz,
Yes.
Renahan,
Yes.
Sharp.
Aye.
There we go.
All right.
One down.
All right, next. Continuing under consent agenda,
Oh, we-
I'll entertain a motion to combine and approve the B, monthly staff reports, C, revenue report 911 surcharge funds, D, minutes approval, policy advisory committee, and E, minutes approval, ETS board.
Second. Third.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Blackoff,
Aye.
Ranowitz,
Yes.
Renahan,
Aye.
Sharp,
Aye.
Setmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Eden,
Aye.
Yes.
Trans, Ignacio. Gillido,
Yes.
Connolly,
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next one, under 7A, this is milestones, E ETSR 38-20. We're looking to table this item. It's a recommendation to table until August meeting as final testing is not complete due to social distancing protocols. Purvis anticipates being completed by August 7th.
So move Conley.
Table.
Second, Bill.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Connolly,
Aye.
Blackoff,
Aye.
Ranowitz,
Yes.
Renahan,
Aye.
Sharp,
Aye.
Setmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Eden,
Aye.
Trans,
Yes.
Ignacio. Gillido,
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve E ETSR 4520, resolution for approval of milestone 5A, the final monetary milestone in the amount of $717,737 in accordance with Exhibit E, payment milestone schedule of Intergraph customer project DUPG 2.00.11.11 of contract 1914-0001 served. Purchase order 950900 to Intergraph Corporation, DBA Hexagon Safety and Infrastructure, a Delaware corporation, in the amount of $717,737. Take it a
So
motion.
moved by Tillman.
Second, Renahan.
Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Yes, I've got a question if I could, Franz here. I saw a memo from Delta Works saying that there were still some outstanding issues. Can staff kind of illuminate what those are and it's on packet page 66.
We're gonna bring Dave, nope, Jordan, not my
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
It should be on.
He's on now. Can you hear Dave Jordan? Dave, can you hear us?
Dave Jordan, can you hear us?
You're killing me.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. My video doesn't seem to be wanting to come up. All right. I'm sorry, Member Franz. You were asking about the items on page 66 from the Mike Galvin from Delta Works, his report.
Correct.
Okay. From an RMS standpoint, the project closeout memo, we had two P2 items on that memo. Those have both been resolved. There were a couple of outstanding issues or outstanding items relating from the project. all of Hexagon's work has been completed on their side, and we've tested those as well. We're in the process of moving. Well, a couple of them have already been put into production. There's one outstanding that we're going to be pushing into production shortly, but Hexagon's completed all of their work on their side. We've tested it to verify that it does work. It's just a process that we have to do to push it into production.
Okay, I'm not, but what's Mike, is Michael on the call by chance? What's he referring to? Not all issues have been fully resolved. And the county must ensure that all outstanding issues have a sufficient resolution plan prior to closing the implementation phase. And that memo was dated July 8th.
Yeah, I'm confused on the memo because it says dated July 8th, but then it says project update May 2020. So
my situation may speak to this a little bit if I, with Mr. Jordan still on the phone. And speaking with the chiefs last week at the executive board meeting, we have some concerns as well. While we understand the COVID situation has led to a number of issues not being resolved because we are unable to have face-to-face meetings, we also have a subcommittee of that group that I sit on that works directly with Mr. Jordan and with Hexagon. During a number of those meetings, the police side of this program has spoken directly with Hexagon about a number of ongoing software issues that we are seeing on our side. They have agreed to deal with those issues. They have stated that they were working towards getting them in the quarterly updates for the last 2 quarterly updates. And both of those updates, the software has not been improved upon. And quite honestly, the updates have not gone without hitch. There's been a number of issues in the quarterly updates that have led to downtime, and they have had to take items that were scheduled for the update out in order to make the update run. So the police side of this also has issues with making this final payment.
Okay, if I can just address there's 2 things going on here, so everybody's on the same page. With Mike Galvin's memo, we went through a project closeout process with Hexagon that we went through the contractual items line by line and verified that they were completed. Mike Galvin put together a memo with the project, with the findings of that based off the contract. We went through those. I believe his memo here is referring to those items that came out of that project closeout meeting. This is something we discussed at the oversight committee meeting just last month. Based off of the project closeout, contractually, Hexagon came out. There was 2 sections in Mike Galvin's memo. One was per the contract, we can't close out the contract unless all P1 and P2 items have been resolved. P1 and P2, those are priority 1, priority 2 issues, the major issues. All of our P2 issues, and this is like system defects, not necessarily user enhancements. All of those have been resolved. He did list outstanding project task, and there was a list of those. Some of them were RMS, some of those were CAD related. When I mentioned that the ones that he listed on that in that closeout memo, we had the ones from the RMS side. All of those Hexagons delivered those items. We've got to have a secondary process that we've been going through, that I've been working with the chiefs and the user focus group to identify what Hexagon deems as wellness items, more like a customer satisfaction, issues within the software that aren't up to what we need them to be. We met back in November. We identified 40 plus items that we've been working through with Hexagon. They've delivered on close to 30 of those those wellness items. We still have a list of those to do. Member Shar is correct. The updates have been a little rough, to say the least. We've managed to get through them and push them out. We have made considerable changes in the system to improve them, to improve it. We still have some an outstanding list to do that. So that's kind of a secondary process, which is not necessarily reflected in Mike Galvin's report, because this was a contractual closeout project memo. Does that am I making sense there?
Well, Dave, I don't know if that helps. If Gavin's memo is about contractually closing it out and he says there's still items that need to be addressed, then how is it would appear to me he's not satisfied that it's contractually ready for closeout.
I really need to speak with Mike as to which items he's referring to. The project closeout memo did have a list of both CAD related and RMS related items. I can speak towards RMS related items that Hexagon's delivered those items to us and we've tested them.
David, in hearing you speak too, you said, Joe Moreno, it's talking about there's multiple customer service issues, there's multiple software issues, and there's well over 40 problems. Why would we pay out on something like that if we know we have all those issues? I hear you on the contractual part, but it seems like there's a lot of issues and people aren't happy here. So why would we give them the last payment until those issues are resolved?
Well, that's a decision for the board, but I'm just trying to point out that those are the differences. This memo is coming from a contractual standpoint. The customer satisfaction issues are items that that we've pointed out to Hexagon. And like I said, they've resolved quite a bit of those. They're not all outstanding. The 40 some are not all still outstanding. Those are items that Hexagon's come back to the table to work with us to get those resolved. Now their performance in getting those resolved has been, is up for debate, I guess, because we've made some progress in areas and other areas we haven't. So it might, I don't, it's up to the board's decision as how you want to handle that. I think Hexagon has shown some good faith in coming back to the table and taking care of these things and been working with us on these. Contractually, they're not necessarily required to, but they've come to the table and they've been working with us, and we've had some good high-level executive support in Hexagon to get some of these pushed through.
Thank you.
I think it's for Linda. Did PRMS, did they recommend this for approval?
Yes, so in the RMS meeting, they made a recommendation to approve, so that's.
Puts us in.
I did just see if I can get Mike Galvin to come on the line, so hang on.
Well, I've got a question for David. He's still there.
I'm trying to join in a different way. Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you, David.
Yeah. Yeah. Can everyone else hear me?
No, we can.
Oh, good. I jumped off of another system. So, on this system here, I mean, there seems to be a total miscommunication of what the issues are, where the issues lie, and what is related and what is being taken care of. I mean, I know Hexagon has been doing and putting their foot forward to solve some of the issues. And I think the way it's being presented, it's a little bit confusing from a closeout report. I think we need to really dive into these issues. And I do agree that we have to give some consideration to Hexagon, especially if some of the things are not contractually obligated, that they are taking care of the issues.
That was my question, is what are they doing that's not contractually obligated? I hate to hold up a contractual payment if they're doing that.
Exactly. Right. And they have been putting their best foot forward to help solve the issues. And we can quantify that because we have had major issues resolved.
Major issues that are not contractual?
well, prior issues resolved, and they have stepped up, upon request. When they've identified issues, they've dug deep into rectifying those issues. So as Dave Jordan said, I think there's a misclarification on what the closeout and what are some of the issues are. And I think there's a mix up there.
Well, that's what I was asking David Jordan is what, I mean, some of the things that they were working on over the last 2 or 3 months was because the system was closing down. It wasn't working. So I got to believe those were contractual issues. But now, if there's things out there that we're just adjusting them slightly to make people happy or whatever we're doing, and it's not contractual, then I guess I pay them. But I need to know the difference between the two.
Exactly. I think once, if that could be eloquently clarified, I think we could, all make an intelligent decision. But again, they have been at the table as a contractor. They have stepped up. They have resolved issues. They've been communicative with staff.
I don't believe anybody has issue with the effort that Hexagon is putting forward. I think they have issue with the product that is being pushed forward. Again, while I understand there is a difference between what they're contractually obligated to do and what they're doing outside of that contract, it's my opinion that the reason they're working so hard outside the contract is DuPage County is a huge win for them, and they want to be able to make us happy so they can use us moving forward as a reference. And I'm certainly happy to do that if everything goes well. But there are within the contract, I would suggest that a quarterly update is part of the contract, and they have not had a quarterly update yet that has worked correctly and has not caused problems at the user level. So that being the case, there are some contractual issues that are still outstanding that need to be addressed.
And the software updates as well. I'm sure that is a contractual issue when you sign on. Anytime we have a software update, it seems like we take a few steps backwards. They say, oh, that's just a few hiccups. No, when you do a software update, it should be an improvement to your overall product, not taking a few steps back to then relearn something and go at it from a different direction. So from that standpoint, I agree with you.
I mean, that's noted. Can we hear from other users? Eve?
Other users. Yeah.
I don't know that we have any other users on the line directly.
Okay. I mean, these are all valid points and noted.
Jim Conley, I brought this up last month, and I think this is the challenge I was trying to raise when I raised the question last month. So what I understand, just hearing what Dave said, is that he believes contractual obligations were met, but these wellness items are not completed. Here, the police representatives saying they're not particularly happy with the product overall, and there's still enhancements or improvements need to be made. But we have the PRMS committee recommending approval of the payment, obviously from the police record side. We haven't talked about the CAD side of this, which is actually our primary responsibility as a board. Where do we stand with that? Linda, do we believe all the contractual obligations have been met on the CAD side, and are there wellness items?
Well, on the CAD side, we believe the contractual obligations have been met. We have some PSEP directors here who can speak to that as members. There are always enhancements, so we're always bringing enhancements or changes or suggestions to Hexagon and they're working with us. So that's kind of the live evolving as we use it thing that I think Member Shar is talking about with his group as well. It's continuing to evolve. So, we are always bringing those, but that's going to be with any system as you use it. So I would ask if the members have any other comment.
Yeah, I think what's striking me now is based on Member Franz's original question and reading Galvin's memo, who we hire to be our project manager and oversee this. If I understand what Dave Jordan had said, I would assume that Galvin's memo was just related to the contractual closeout, and then he says not all issues have been resolved. So I guess that's my concern is I totally get there's other stuff out there, and the PSAP, we live that, we understand that there's other stuff out there, and I agree the company's working to resolve those issues. I'm just confused because I got a PMRS committee recommending a payment, and I've got a project manager that seems to be saying not all contract things have been met. That's where my confusion is.
But wait, there's more.
Well, we have.
There's more. Okay, so Mike Galvin says he can't jump on because he's doing something with his daughter. He said till about 8:30, but he's in California, so I believe that's 10:30, if I'm doing correct math. He said, in short, he wasn't able to close out all issues with Bambi being because she had left Hexagon. That was our project manager. No issues on CAD end, but I was not able to confirm with Dave. But everything is being tracked in the RSA reports. If Dave is comfortable with all his issues are being addressed, then I have no issues on my end. So that's from Mike Galvin.
This is Franz again. I just, this is a pretty big project. What's the harm in holding off for a month and making sure we can get not only Mike with a little bit more of an explanation than a text on the fly, but you know, we've got a PSA from Hexagon that's been hired to manage this. Can we confirm with them, and let's make sure we're all on the same page before we get this final payout?
That's at the pleasure of the board. You know, I mean, you've already made your maintenance payment of 1 million, so I don't know that it affects Hexagon either way, other than they certainly would like to have their final payment. But it's the pleasure of the board.
I'll move the table to the next.
I think you have a vote on the table, so you need to withdraw that.
I can move the table, the motion.
Yeah, and then motion to postpone it for a certain date.
What's our next date? August 11th. I move to postpone to August 11th.
I'd second that. Ability.
There was a motion and a second to postpone till the next meeting, August 11th. Roll call.
Eckhoff,
Aye.
Moranowitz,
Yes.
Renahan,
Yes.
Shar,
Aye.
Tetmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Noonan,
Aye.
Franz,
Yes.
Keo, Ignacio,
Aye.
Bilodeau,
Yes.
Connolly.
Aye.
Yes, this motion to table to the August 11th meeting.
Okay, so on your payment of claims, that's your new total if you're not going to make that payment.
So that's one here, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Next agenda item is going to be the payment of claims. 19-20-41 payment of claims for July 13, 2020 for FY20. Total for 4,000-5820 equalization. I would like to make a motion, entertain a motion to amend this. We're going to have a new total, and that's going to be $507,073.44. Entertain a motion to amend the amount. I move to approve.
So moved.
Roll call.
Ignacio,
Aye.
Bilodeau,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Eckhoff,
Aye.
Moranowitz,
Yes.
Renahan,
Aye.
Shar,
Aye.
Tetmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Noonan,
Aye.
Franz,
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, under purchase resolutions, I'll entertain a motion to approve ETSR 46-20, awarding resolution to Deccan International, PO 919127/4006-1 for the second of 5 optional annual renewals of live mum maintenance. The amount of the renewal, $37,999.
So move, Conley.
Second.
Roll call.
Conley,
Aye.
Echo,
Aye.
Baranowitz,
Yes.
Granahan,
Aye.
Shar,
Aye.
Tetmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Stillman,
Aye.
Noonan,
Aye.
Franz,
yes,
Adolfo,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to approve ETSR 47-20, awarding resolution to Real Time Networks, Inc., PO 920-13142, temperature sensor devices and related equipment. Total amount, $8,805. This is COVID-19 related.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Echo,
Aye.
Baranowitz,
Yes.
Granahan,
Aye.
Shar,
Aye.
Tetmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Stillman,
Aye.
Noonan,
Aye.
Franz,
yes,
Adolfo,
Yes.
Philido,
Yes.
Connolly,
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Next item, ETSR 48-20. I'm looking to entertain a motion to amend this item per the new quote received. Increase in the amount of $1,155 for a new total amount of $47,941.50. Entertain a motion to amend as presented.
So moved. Brennahan.
Second by Tillman.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Granahan,
Aye.
Tetmeyer,
Aye.
Teams,
Aye.
Stillman,
Aye.
Noonan,
Aye.
Franz,
yes,
Adolfo,
Yes.
Philido,
Yes.
Connolly,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Baranowitz,
Yes.
sorry, I skipped
Motion passes. Next item is going to be Mesereau Insurance.
Patrick Genovese is here with us in 3500B. He is the county risk manager and the other submitter of the memo you got from he and I regarding contract. So we participated in the county bid for a broker for insurance, and the end result is the memo that you received over the weekend. So there is going to be a realized savings of approximately $8,000 if we go with Mesereau. So budget impact, flat fee versus the premium or the commission. So the recommendation of Mr. Genovese and I is that you consider Mesereau. If that's what you want to do, then we'll prepare the paperwork and we'll bring that forward to you for your next board meeting. And from that point forward, Mr. Genovese, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that would be an annual savings because it's a 3-year contract with Mesereau with a 1-year extension option.
Right. So with the broker, we can go for multiple years, Mr. Franz. But the insurance will be renewed annually as it's reviewed. So, and to Mr. Genovese's point, it's an annual savings. Any questions?
With that,
oh, sorry, go ahead, David.
yeah, with that savings, is there any degradation in service or anything that's not there, or is it the same for less?
It would be increased.
Got
I
it.
don't know if you could hear it. Oh, okay.
I was just gonna ask a quick question. What is the annual total? I don't have it in front of me.
Currently, we're paying about $68,000 a year.
Okay, so it's about 60 then. Great, thank
Any further discussion?
Jim Conley, just a question, and I don't see it in this memo, but maybe it was in the staff report. Somewhere alluded to the fact that we were self-insured for everything except property or some language to that effect. That doesn't seem correct based on my past remembrance of what we did with insurance. Could the risk manager speak to that?
Your current policies have insurance deductibles. For instance, property insurance, you have a deductible of $4,000. So if you had a $20,000 claim, it would be $10,000 out of pocket before they'd send you a check for the other 10. Some people consider the deductible a self-insured portion. So it could be nomenclature.
Thanks for the clarification. So with Mesero, we're intending to keep all the same coverages we have now, including the property policy on the consoles and on the portables and the D&O policy and all the things we've had in the past, correct?
That is correct. They will go out to market. This is good timing. Your policies are due in December, so they'll begin marketing shortly after a broker record letter is submitted to your current broker and the insurance carrier. I will recommend that they reevaluate your cyber liability exposure. I confirmed with IT today, Mr. Carlson, our CIO at the county, that your both DUCOM and ETSB systems are not connected to the county system. So you're a standalone, if you will, for lack of a better term. And with that in mind, I'm suggesting a risk assessment of your IT program, as we have done here at the county. And Mr. Carlson, we did that several years ago. Mr. Carlson made some improvements in our IT, firewalls, etc. So I'm going to suggest that that be done as well. Your current D&O policy, just for clarification, covers cyber liability protection for the board. It does not cover you if you're breached. Okay, it does not cover you if someone should capture the DUCOM system and hold it in ransom. You're not covered for that today. So after a risk assessment is done, there would be some recommendations, and I'm a safety geek, not an IT geek, if needed, for improvements. And there may not be any need for improvements. But with that in mind, you may elect in the future to take out a separate cyber liability insurance policy that would cover such things as ransomware, etc. But then again, that's decisions and suppositions down in the future.
Thanks. That's very, very helpful. Just one last question on your recent comment. So seems like a reasonable thing to do on the cyber side. Is that a service that Mesero provides, or is that something we need to purchase over and above?
Mesero would recommend some vendors for us to use, or for you to use.
Not a service the broker provides.
At a discount.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, when he talks about DUCOM, that DUCOM would have a separate system, but the 911 system as a whole, which would include the sheriff and Addison, would be covered under this policy. The only other reminder is there's a separate deductible for portables at $500 per unit.
I'm sorry, Linda, can you say that one more time? So DUCOM's got a separate policy, but ACDC and the sheriff are covered under this policy?
No, DUCOM, when Mr. Genovese talked, when he was talking, he said DUCOM, that's inaccurate. This is a 911 system. So everything under the 911 system, all three PSAPs are covered.
That makes sense. Okay.
DUCOM would have any network, anything that DUCOM is running separately, any equipment or anything that DUCOM owns is covered separately. That's not part of this. So it's the 911 system. So that's all three PSAPs, any towers, any place we have equipment, which is pretty much everywhere in the county.
But we don't have cyber for our networks.
But we do not have cyber for our networks at this time.
I'm sorry, one more quick question, Franz again. Didn't we talk about beginning the process of doing some of that assessment when we talked about some of the issues we've had earlier this year?
In terms of hardware and software, yes, and the tech team is been doing that. And there's certain recommendations that have come before the board that have been approved for switches and other changes. So that's in process.
But this is more of a global review of potential threats.
Right, and those are in the queue as well. It's just a matter of finding vendors to do that. And we're on the list with the Federal Office of Homeland Security Division to do that as well.
Great, thank you.
This is Member Tillman. I have a question. So it's my understanding that Mesro will recommend vendors to do this risk assessment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Have we ever had penetration testing done on any of our systems in the past?
A while ago, yes.
Okay.
Linda, when you made the inquiry of Homeland Security, wasn't there somewhat of a high level assessment made, or kind of a high level attack scenario reviewed by them? I recall seeing a report, but I could be wrong on that.
We were in the queue for that. It's been pushed back just because of things happening in the world. So, we are seeking other vendors to do this. Any other question? Okay, I think there was a question.
All right, we're going to take a roll call on this. So in regards to the consensus of the board, moving forward with Mesro Insurance.
Is there a motion or?
Isn't it just staff direction?
What's the direction?
Do we have to approve it or?
We don't have a contract.
The resolution is resolution to approve access to, as it's written.
Well, it was an action item to, so right now it's a discussion on whether or not they want to use Mesro. If they want to use Mesro, then do they vote on it?
Yes.
So the action is to go with Mesro, and then we do a roll call with that?
A contract next month, right?
Yes.
So that's why I was questioning is I don't know that you have to, if we're voting on the contract next month, then isn't this direction to prepare the contract?
If I may interrupt. Sorry. The Mesro contract, when we went out for an RFP for a broker this year, your current broker was included and was asked to respond, and they declined. And several brokers did, including Mesro. And part and parcel of that, to make it easy for the ETSB board, we included in the overall RFP what ETSB current coverages are and what price would a broker be interested in providing marketing insurance for ETSB. And Mesro responded with a $2,500 flat fee. They also responded to the county's needs as well as the health department's needs. So versus 3 RFPs, we combined it into 1 RFP with 3 separate sections, okay? And a broker could decline, yeah, I'm interested in the health department, and respond to that RFP as such, and not respond to the ETSB or the county in general, etc. Mesro responded to all 3. The county and health department accepted that contract as is. So currently, we have a contract, okay, with $2,500 flat fee for ETSB. Should the board elect not to use Mesro, we'll just have a change order and deduct that $2,500 flat fee from the overall price of the contract. If the board elects to use Mesereau, then we could provide you a copy of that contract, but there is no need for a separate one unless you decide you want one.
There is a need for the ETS board, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Vacy, to approve it under resolution because they're an agency of the county and not under the general fund. So they would still have to approve that portion of the contract. So you would, that would come back to you next month. So it doesn't change any, if you're going to go forward, it doesn't change any action on the action that the county board has taken, but you'll still have to formally approve that. So we can pay bills and do stuff. Yeah.
Is there just one broker record letter then, or we're not signing a separate broker record letter for ETSB? Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's nothing to do this month.
I just need direction, and since you can't just go on as a consensus, you need to do a roll call.
I'll make a motion to
I
continue to use Mesereau.
blame Robert and his rules. I didn't make this myself.
Not a receive and place on file. I mean, what do you
Well,
think?
as of now, it's set out under E1.
B1?
70.
Oh, Steve. So as of, I mean, it has no, there's nothing in there. Right, there's no action to take there, so.
So you can just let it go
Yeah.
based on direction? Okay. Mesereau,
Place on file.
everybody?
Go
Okay,
forth, bring your contract.
there we
All
go.
right,
Phew.
all right. All right. Next, resolutions. I'll entertain a motion to approve ETSR 4320, resolution to approve access to the two-page emergency dispatch interoperable radio system talk groups pursuant to policy 911-005.2, access to the two-page emergency dispatch interoperable radio system as requested by the Canadian Pacific Police Service.
So moved, Tegmeyer.
Second, Shock.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Tegmeyer.
Aye.
Teams.
Aye.
Aye.
Noonan.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Ignacio.
Yes.
Philadelphia.
Aye.
Connolly.
Aye.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Moranowitz. Yes. Kernahan.
Aye.
Shar.
Motion passes. Under E2, I'll entertain a motion, excuse me, to approve ETSR 4420, resolution to adopt policy 911-005.11, two-page emergency dispatch interoperable radio system wave application. Need a motion?
Bilodeau.
Second by Tillman.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Philadelphia.
Aye.
Connolly.
Aye.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Moranowitz. Yes. Kernahan.
Aye.
Shar.
Aye.
Tegmeyer.
Aye.
Teams.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Noonan.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Ignacio.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item is going to be FY20 budget.
Okay, so I've sent you an email with the chart that we're going to talk about. Before we get to the chart, we've been talking about operating budget in the previous meeting, and that operating budget are all the things that you already currently have under contractual obligation. The board, as I mentioned in the staff report, the board has asked for a staff study, which we're finalizing. And we have on capital items been working with a team for radio replacement that will be shortly, hopefully making some recommendations to you. And Treasurer Gwen Henry and I went through the financial forecast that we're going to look at. And the outlook is good. Member Franz, did you just fall off your chair? So before, there's a couple of caveats before I put it up on the screen, and we'll walk through it based on, you can go ahead and put it up. That's why I sent it to you, because it's a little hard to see. Okay, so the way that we started this is using the current fiscal year, the ending balance based on the treasurer's report as of November 30th gave you a cash balance of 25 million. That doesn't include everything that's obligated. That's just where your ending cash starts at the year. Then what I did was take all of your payment of claims that have been made this year. You'll see some FY19 because those are the payments that you made for late bills or costs that came in after fiscal year 20 started. While in your audit report, they would have been reversed back into that fiscal year, they do come out of the cash that we're talking about. So I have to show it here so that we get as accurate a number as possible. So those are the payments. It's going to be a little off now because of the hexagon payment, but eventually you're going to pay it, so we might as well deduct it anyway. And then estimated the cost based on projects completing through the end of the fiscal year of about 5.1 million, or a total of expenditures of about 11 million for this year. That would then put, as of June 30th, a cash of 13 million. The capital contingency fund that you started last year under financial CFO Paul Rafek, and that was at the recommendation and discussion with Baker Tilly. You have a line item in your budget 54,199 that is capital contingency. You have earmarked $11 million. That's for your equipment replacement. Your recommended contribution this year to stay on task with the replacement of portable radios, CPE equipment, and all of the systems that we have talked about in the past is about $7 million. Actual surcharge received this year so far is $11 million. We anticipate by the end of the fiscal year an additional 4.4 million, and agency reimbursements, that would be the PMRS group, of about $380,000. So the best estimate for cash for this year would mean ending up at 11 million. Now keep in mind that you have contractual obligations through the next 4 years of about $30 million. So, and you see that projected. So then you come up to next year and we bring that cash forward based on the current operating budget. That's that number includes capital expenses like CPE replacement, because that has to be done. The other larger equipment replacement systems are not calculated into that number that shows estimated operating budget. So that comes forward. Then you see your annual contingency contribution. And then this, so then we took a surcharge, and I've given you two scenarios here. The first is if you stay at approximately 1.1 million monthly in receipt of surcharge. The second is if we drop down to 10 million. And so I've given you kind of a window to see where this may go. The reason we're doing that is, remember, my major concerns are, will the state sweep the 25 million that the 911 system board has, and the ISP have set aside for the statewide network? If they do that, they then lose $6 million in federal money, 6 to 10 million. And that means that when this contract is awarded for the statewide network, the $1.50 that's collected per month per device, that distribution formula will be amended or changed in order to pay that cost. So we don't know what the distribution to the 911 systems will be if those things happen. So those are the things that can impact the system. I think those are my major concerns, and I won't know that the governor signed the bill that you saw in the staff report, so we know we'll get surcharge at $1.50 through December of next year. Beyond that, we have legislative opportunity, because there will be a sunset next year, to look at that. So if the statewide network has costs, or we know what those numbers are, there'll be a sufficient argument in April and May to talk about those things. And then Member Franz had talked about a capital operating, you have capital contingency, and then you have, you talked about capital reserves. At 30% of the operating budget, that's shown at roughly 2.5 million. I think you might need to scroll up a little bit, Eve. And then that box on the bottom sort of outlines your capital contingencies. Now, I'm not saying you're going to do radios. Radios are estimated at a retail price of about 24 million. I just had to plug it in somewhere so you could see it. Because as you know, there's going to be some end of life on some of that equipment, and that is under discussion. And then I plugged in the next few things that are going to be your larger ticket items. And then what we've shown in that box is what your capital contingency start number is, what your contribution is, and then anything that you've been deducting or would be deducting, so you can kind of see what the recovery rate will be and what will happen from that point. Has everybody been able to get that in their email? Or have access to it? All right. Treasurer, do you have any other things to add?
No, I just want to comment that I think you are lucky to have Linda here working and doing these numbers for you. She worked very hard and is very thorough. And she's covered almost everything you could consider.
Thank you. Okay, can we, want to bring them, do you want to leave the chart up for questions, or do you want to just go back to the full screen? Thank you. And I made sure that the treasurer went through everything because it was a nice picture and I was happy about it, and I wanted to make sure I didn't have bad math. So this gives you an idea of the forecast. You'd ask for a 10-year forecast. At this point, it would be difficult to do it. I mean, I can project it out the same way using those high, low, worst case scenarios, but it would be a guesstimate. So I certainly can do that if you'd like me to.
But it would get meaningless as you go further out.
Pardon?
It would be meaningless as you go further out.
It was one of the discussion points, so that I just wanted to address that. But. So yay, good job. Our evil plan is working on consolidation. We're saving money and we're getting there. It's taken 10 years, but we're finally getting to that point, I think. All things considered.
I've got a quick question. It's Fran, sorry. Hard to formulate questions when we're just seeing this now, but thanks for putting it together, Linda. It's a great starting point. From a revenue standpoint, what's been the history of the surcharge, not from a rate standpoint, but from a year-over-year cost of inflation or additional lines? I guess Illinois is losing population, so maybe is it pretty flat? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing?
So one of the things that the state advisory board will be talking about is the distribution formula, because there is a portion of that formula that is what they call hold harmless. So it takes the wireline number that you were receiving in 2015 and starts at that baseline amount. So in the case of DuPage, it's roughly 2.5 million. The telecom industry anticipates they're losing roughly 10 to 12% of wireline accounts annually. So on that basis, you're losing, we today with our wireline accounts, and this was accurate in our picture before we went to a state surcharge, we were seeing a decrease of approximately 10% annually in wireline. So where the challenge is in the current state formula is that, excuse me, is that hold harmless amount is a number that nobody's receiving. So it's not, all 911 systems aren't receiving the number or that monetary value that they were at that time. So that window of distribution is shrinking. So there's discussion on how we go forward with those costs. And so the challenge, is really the diminish of wireline. VoIP has replaced that, but most people, and I think while most people continue to pay their phone bills over COVID, we haven't seen, we're 4 months behind. So we're only seeing March this month. So we haven't had an opportunity to see if there's going to be any decreases in what's being collected. Not what necessarily is owed, but what is what has been collected. During the last recession, we saw a little bit of a dip, maybe 20 to 30,000, and then there were some, a couple of months where it would ebb and flow. But so those are the bigger impacts in terms of state numbers. Answer your question?
Sort of. I get the wire lines are decreasing, but what's been the trend on the VoIP and the wireless? Are those increasing to make up that difference, or are those flat?
Well, VoIP is counted under wireline in terms of the count currently.
It is. Okay.
And so it is, so that number, I think I don't know that it's 100% flat yet, but if you're going to keep a wireline account, you probably converted it to VoIP. And on wireless, I think, every fifth grader that gets a phone increases our surcharge. So but other than that, and then devices, but, so they're saying it's a little bit stable or has flattened out. So it would just be new users or people who you are paying surcharge on things like tablets. So a household could be paying surcharge on, half a dozen devices or better, depending on the family.
Okay, thank you.
390 ish.
Lynn, is Jim a question?
Yeah.
So I see at the bottom where you have radio and radio consoles for the potential capital spends. Did you say up above in the annual numbers that other capital expenditures are baked in there, like CPE equipment and CAD and other things, or did I misunderstand that?
So on the line that says estimated operating budget appropriation, the only capital item I've put in there are the workstation replacements at around 150,000 a year. The other larger items, because we don't, those are considered a capital cost, but they're not in your equipment replacement schedule because of their value. So I was trying to think of the cleanest way to do it. So I left the big ticket items out and put them in the box so you could see that flow.
Okay, so I see in the big box at the bottom you're talking about, I see the logger, the consoles, and radios, meaning primarily portable radios. Is there nothing else in major systems that would be spent in the next 5 years?
As part of operations.
You have from your equipment replacement, you have CPE. There are other capital items, but they wouldn't be in this 5-year projection yet. So CPE would be coming up.
Yeah, that's why I think a 10-year is necessary, just to capture that over a longer period of time. I know it's further you get out, the further you're guesstimating, but you just need to see it because these capital expenditures are fairly significant.
Okay. So again, what I've tried to do in the last 2 meetings is give you your baseline for operating and then this revenue forecast projection. The next things up will be the capital. I'm waiting for a few capital submissions and then some decisions. The fire chiefs are going to weigh in on a system. The police and fire chiefs are going to look at radios. So there's a few things coming your way in August as well. And as soon as I get information, I will be sending it out to you. I can run this projection further out so you can see it. But it's just kind of creating that foundation for you to make some of the larger decisions in the end. On the operating, those are all capital contractual expenses. I've projected those out for maintenance of systems that you have indicated you're going to support. So there really won't, other than if you're going to add staff or add any other maintenance to something that you're going to buy or do, it shouldn't change that much.
Linda, on that point, and I know it's, not time today to discuss it, but, if we start talking about, 5 and 10 year projections, if we go backwards 10 years ago, there's a huge chunk of capital expenditure in here that we didn't have or maybe didn't even anticipate 10 years ago. But my only concern is when we start looking farther out, that we actually have an eye on what the PSAPs of the future 5 and 10 years from now are going to be. And I don't know exactly what they're going to be, but I could pretty much say I don't think they're going to be what they are today. We've already seen it with, social media, text, video, again, how those things are handled, what's acceptable surcharge, money, expenditures are all kind of open questions. But I can only imagine that in 5 or 10 years, there's going to be a different list, maybe an additional list of capital expenditures. I'm just curious, how we get our arms around what that future might look like. Brian or Dee might have, better futuristic view of the PSAP of the future. But given whatever that is, what are those potential capital items and how would they affect these projections? Because I know 10 years ago, we didn't have a big chunk of this, including $24 million of radios in our planning.
We had the radio planning.
10 years ago, we
You
did.
might have had it as a dream, but it wasn't reality yet.
Well, they were purchased over 10 years ago.
Well, we did the ETSB did purchase radios in 2010. So you were in there. The issue that you had is it wasn't until really last year that you started earmarking funds for that. So there really was no replacement schedule. So, to Member Franz's point of what are we supporting? What are you going to be supporting? You can somewhat project out that replacement cost and how that's going to be. So we had, the ETS board had not been setting aside money for 10 years. Had they been doing that, this financial picture might look a little bit differently.
Yeah, my point's, we could quibble over 10 years or 11 years, whatever. My point being is what does the PSAP of the future look like? What are those unanticipated capital expenditures that we don't know about today? This is a kind of a maintenance budget, if you will, from a capital perspective. This is supporting the systems we know today. I'm asking a question, what are the systems of tomorrow and how do we plan for that? Can we plan for that? Do we have any ideas what that might involve? Those are the questions I've got.
I agree with Member Connolly. The PSAP of the future is going to be streaming video and body cam and texting and doing all sorts of things. And public expectation and meeting that expectation is going to be at the forefront of what we do. Technology is not going to go backwards. It's only going to move forward. You got to plan for that.
I think that's probably the best argument or statement for continuing to fund your capital contingency line item so that you don't, if we identify those things and we keep saving, so to speak, then you don't have these huge impacts and you can flatten your budget, which gives you an idea of what your disposable income, so to speak, is. And where that might go to the PSAPs or or new projects or things like that. Because, with radios and things like that, if you flatten it and you do that contribution and based on today's estimated cost of $2 million a year for 10 years, that's a lot less impactful than trying to make up that difference in a short window. And then, if your cash flow stays at 14 million annually, that puts you in a very nice comfortable picture, assuming that we can hang on to that from the state. And I could try hard.
Can I ask one other question, Franz, again here? So am I reading this correctly? That at the end of fiscal year 25, we would have a capital contingency balance of close to $25 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But remember, if the board is going to elect to provide radios, you have to save at that rate in order to be able to afford replacement. Now, to Member Conley's point, you know, if technology changes, that could change the way that save at any point in this, that can change the way the savings plan goes, right? We save it longer, we do it differently. If we elect to do a refresh instead of a replacement, then that changes the impact of the cost. But I don't know any other way to save than for full replacement, because if we get to a point, you know, we've sat here this morning and had police chiefs say they're very unhappy with the system they're using. So when this contract's up, if they elect to go someplace else, if that were your expense, you would have to have enough money to do that. So you have to save at a replacement value and not a refresh value. If you get to a system, now the ETSB has stated that they want to stay with the CAD. So we did make an adjustment for CAD in terms of the savings amount we put in there, because it'll only be a refresh in 2 years. So you're not saving for a full replacement value, but then you start saving at that value again, so that in 3 to 5 years from that point, if you need to replace something, you have the money that's there.
Right, but the radios are incorporated into this budget. So we have 25 million at the end of fiscal year 25 projected after the radios are completed, are replaced.
Right, but you have to save for that.
Forecast.
But you have to save for that. And
Not
you're
following
still
that.
gonna, well, you're starting, you buy them, you spend $24 million and you start immediately saving to replace them at 2 million a year. So, and you don't, and maybe I do need to project out all of your other replacements so you can see that impact, because you're gonna have CPE and some other things that will come up.
Yeah, we absolutely have to see that schedule.
Hey, Linda, this is Hand. I have a question with this 14 million for the surcharge revenue. I mean, it looks like that's only guaranteed until December 2021. I mean, how can we even go forward looking at this number if we don't know legislatively how that's going to hold?
Well, and that's the reason I've given you a window projection between 14 million and 10, so you can kind of see. I would hope that we would never go below 10 million, but that was my worst case scenario projection if the surcharge were to change after December.
So you are hearing that 10 million might be a bottom, I mean, theoretically.
No, but what I don't know, because the contract hasn't been awarded, is I don't know what that cost is. So I don't know what those impacts are going to be. So I'm giving you kind of a window of if something were to change, where it might go. It's a guess. But I didn't want to go any lower than that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know you can only do what you can do, but I'm just kind of looking at these numbers. That's a lot of shaky ground we're working with.
Chairman, if I can make a comment on that. Sure. Julie, to your comment, I mean, the one thing I'd offer is that we've dealt with sunsets ever since wireless money came around in about 99, 2000. They always, they've gotten renewed in one way or the other. There are what Linda's already described as some unknowns, but the reality is that separate from our ETSB that's got this type of financial planning and foresight, I mean, you would, in the loss of that, if the legislation were just to go away, I mean, 911s across the entire state systems would shut down. You know what I mean? I mean, it would be so dramatic that we'd be able to survive the longest kind of because of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I always, while it's legislative and there's this drop dead date and we always have to be mindful of it, I look at it knowing what it would mean to the rest of the 911 in the entire state and figure that there's got to be a momentum to keep funding this.
Yeah, I don't I agree. I don't anticipate that the surcharge would ever go away. And frankly, the sunsets have been built into the legislation because of the consolidation efforts and the statewide network statewide. So that it provides a check and balance every couple of years to see how we're statutorily doing, allows us to make changes for consolidation or any other impacts that we've seen. So I don't know that it would ever go away. It's just, the question is at what rate? So if there's not a temperature in the General Assembly to go beyond $1.50, or from this board to ask for more, and the statewide network is more expensive, then we could see less than 14 million annually. So
I appreciate your expertise, all of you, on this. I'm just, from the outside, kind of looking at, you can see, might ask the question, but thank you.
Just for perspective, the 10 million is still roughly or a little bit more than what we were collecting a few years ago before the surcharge went to $1.50. Is that about right?
We were about 8. We were about 8 million a year.
And I'm not saying it would, but if you said the worst case was revert back to where it was a couple years ago, and then they took the next generation 911 money out of that, it would be a much lower number than 10 million. And I'm not saying it, I think it's going to go there, but just putting the perspective of where we've been and where we are.
Right.
And just for clarification again, on the table at the bottom where it shows the balance, the capital contingency, that's based on the best case scenario? Is that correct?
Yes.
So to remember Fran's question a minute ago, the 24 million at the end of 5 years, that's based on the best case. If you took the worst case, you'd subtract another $3 million from that or something like that. So somewhere in between those numbers.
I don't think that's correct, because the bottom is just the capital component. So that's given the annual contribution that is being plugged in there. But the worst case, best case is really, it looks like it's just on the operating side, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah, I understand, Mark, but I think it shows a $3 million deficit on the operating side. That money's got to come from somewhere, right?
That's true.
So you don't have it, you can't make the capital contribution, or I would guess.
So then worst case scenario, you're sitting on a $20 million capital balance.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So Member Tillman, just to follow up on what Member Renahan had asked, although the surcharge has continued to be renewed and sunsets are always included in the legislation, I do anticipate that the funding formula may change. I know that there was a great debate amongst many PSAPs and ETSBs in the state about how fair the formula is. And, the debate included, well, if you need to improve your budget, then we need to increase consolidation in order to improve the budget. So one of my concerns is that the funding formula can change in the future. And I am still very concerned about the state sweeping those 911 funds. It has happened in the past. It's unpredictable in the future. And given the state's financial capacity and including this pandemic, which is hurting many municipalities, many units of government, I think the future could hold a sweep of the funds or potentially a surcharge formula change. So for whatever that's worth.
Let me be the contrarian on that one real quick. Franz again. I've heard this before, that they've swept dollars in the past. I don't know the details of that, and we don't need to debate that at the moment. But once the revenues are given to ETSB, they're not going to come in and take the money from ETSB. So I don't understand that concern exactly.
So
prior to the most recent legislation being put in place, the checks for some of the surcharge fund. I don't remember if it was the wireline or wireless. I think it was the wireline. Those checks were sent directly to the ETSB. They never went to the state. Under this new legislation, all the surcharge money is collected by the state and then dispersed to the ETSBs. So my concern would be that this money would be swept prior to being issued to the ETSBs.
I understand the comment. I do not share that concern.
Well, the other piece to this is that the 911 system, the state police have been setting aside money annually for the statewide network. So that money is residing in a reserve fund to pay for the statewide network. If that goes away, so that's the cushion to lessen the impact on the 911 systems. If the state were to sweep that money, that cushion would go away. The other thing that has occurred is at the end of the fiscal year, it takes approximately $20 million in order to do a distribution to the 911 systems for a monthly surcharge collection. So you use your service, you bill, the telecom company you pay the telecom company, they collect it, they estimate, they send it to the state. That's a 4-month lag time. So we're getting money from March. So they had to collect $20 million in order to cut the checks for the 911 systems. At the end of the year, we've experienced, so if there's money laying in that fund, it has been swept. So we've lost $7 to $10 million and at the end of certain fiscal years that was in the operating fund, so to speak, for the 911 systems that had not been dispersed because there wasn't enough money to disperse for the entire system. So the state swept that. So then we start all over again. And while they say they'll pay it back, you know, they never do. So there has been a history. It has not happened recently, which allowed us, because there have been strong discussions with legislators on, you know, it disqualifies us for federal money. So they've left it alone, but you know, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID and those impacts to the state budget. So my last question, you have an equipment replacement policy. There is not a capital reserve, you know, Member Franz, when you talk about capital reserve, is that something that you're saying is different than your capital contingency that we see here, or are those two things the same?
No, that's the same concept.
Okay.
Chairman Noonan, if I can make a suggestion, Franz again, I just think this probably requires a little bit more of a detailed conversation, and maybe not for the entire group, but would the board consider 2 or 3 members sitting with Linda and walking through this and helping better understand a 10-year forecast and be able to be a little bit more comfortable around all these numbers? It's just hard to do it, you know, once a year for 1 or 2 meetings.
Sure.
That's the discussion.
I don't know if we call it a little subgroup or working group or something, but I just I think that would go a long way to you know, give the board some confidence that we can get our arms around these numbers.
Okay. Thanks, Member Franz. I think that's a good idea. But what hell did you pick?
I don't know. I guess if they're interested, they should email you.
All right, we'll send out an email, and if anybody's interested, you know, please respond. I don't want to put anybody on the spot right now to have you guys raise your hands. So.
Oh, but he's got to be on it if he asks.
We have 1 volunteer.
I know that kind of comes with the question, probably, right?
Sean, is there an open meetings violation with this? So we only have so many.
Yeah.
People on
Yes. Yeah, we have more.
On the open meetings issue, the state's attorney, in the email we send, the state's attorney will let us know how many people can be part of that before we have to, well, I mean, you could all be on it like the finance committee. We would just have to have an open meeting. And and broadcast it. But if you don't want to do that, then we'll give you the minimum number.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, this was just my presentation and more will be coming.
Okay.
But good news. So far, sort of.
Does anybody else have any other discussion for the FY21 budget? All right, we'll move on to the next item, two-page ETS B 911 system design.
I don't have anything other than what was in the report unless there are questions. Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, two-page justice information system project.
Same thing. I will make sure that we have Mr. Galvin for next month. Other than that, I have nothing else to report. Well, it's 10:30, we can bring him back.
Yeah. No. All right. Does anybody have any old business? Old business? Old business, moving on to new business. Does anybody have any new business? No new business, all right. I'm advised we do not have any executive session, Cam.
Correct.
All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 11th at 9 o'clock. Is that going to be in?
Well, let me ask this, is the flavor of the board to just move to Monday to the end of the year, fiscal year?
Works for me.
Yes.
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 And it would be August 10th.
Okay. We'll make that August 10th, Monday. Do we want to do partial Zoom or we're still kind of playing it by ear at that point?
And we'll leave it as a partial Zoom at this point unless something changes legislatively or, you're always welcome, so, okay.
Anything else? Does anybody have anything else? Without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Wow.